lot of history right there, eh?
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Well, our third and final inductee to the Hall of Fame right now is came up from Florida. That's a real tan on him. I had a pleasure to actually work with him a little bit at the radio station when he did some color work there back in, when was that?
2010, 11, 12.
Yeah, yeah. And I would like to introduce Tom Meisenheimer. By the way, how many people are friends with Tom on Facebook? Anybody? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's good to know he's not political, right?
Really?
He's a liberal. My brother and I had a 3-hour flight up here from Fort Myers yesterday, so I had a lot of time to prepare my talk. You know, Willie Miller called me a couple weeks ago and said, we're going to induct you into the Hall of Fame, and I couldn't believe it because I never played baseball. But Willie is a guy that I found out that if you drop his name, great things can happen. And my brother, youngest brother who passed away a couple years ago, loved Willie. And he had a shrine of Willie in his house. And he had the Duke's picture and his autograph in the house. And if you know, Willie in the minor leagues was a roommate with Paul Molitor. Well, my son Matt, who is here with his wife Katie today, Matt played college ball, and they played against Minnesota Twins one time down in Fort Myers for spring training. And Paul Molitor was down there, and my brother and the whole family came to the game, and my brother brought a ball along and said, well, you never know when you're going to meet somebody that is big in baseball and get his autograph. And Paul Molitor was down, there was the Baltimore Orioles were playing one minor league team, and the University of Wisconsin Whitewater was playing the other minor league team, and I saw Paul Molitor trying to sneak by and get into the clubhouse. So I figured, hey, this would be a good autograph. So I said, hey, Paul! And he stopped dead. And I said, Willie Miller says hi. He came right over. Signed the autograph, and he's got that autograph. My sister-in-law has got that autograph ball today, so that was really something to see. So if you want to drop a name, drop Willie Miller in baseball, you can get almost anything you want. I did a lot of coaching in Little League, Senior League, did some work with the Warrior traveling team, and then worked with Bill Albrecht a little bit. I never missed one of his practices in the 4 years my son played. But I always taught the kids in Little League the secret of lateral mobility, telling them about going to the left, going to the right to practice to get that ball. And they said, well, Coach, how did you learn about lateral mobility? And I said, well, I was in the seminary, and the last 4 years in the seminary, we had to go out to the Cistercian monastery on Oconomowoc Lake. And Archbishop Cousins at the time had a home next to the Cistercian monastery, and we built a baseball field out there to play softball. And but we didn't have anybody to play with. And then we discovered that the Redemptorist Fathers had a seminary on one of the big lakes in Oconomowoc. But during the summertime, since they were missionaries, they always went to Stumpy Bay in the cow field in Okauchee Lake. And they lived there during the summertime in tents. And so they would get their baseball field together for us. They'd get the cows out of the field, and we would play baseball there. And so you really had to have talent, because if the fly ball came, and I played left field at the time, when a fly ball would come, you could not go directly to the ball because of all the cow pies that were in the field. So you had to go to the left when the fly ball came, you straight ahead to the right, to the left to get the darn ball. So I taught the kids, I said, that's how you did lateral mobility, and that's why it's so important. But my big chance in baseball actually came when I moved to West Bend in 1970. I was recruited, well, actually I begged them, to join the Amity Outseen softball team. John Rozak was our coach. And I always appreciated John for giving me the great chance in baseball, or at least softball here in West Bend. The fifth inning of every single game, if we were ahead 6-0, John put me in to right field. And I was always ready because I had learned lateral mobility. And I was always ready for the game, and I think in all those years, I didn't see one damn ball coming. And Terry Supernut was our coach, and we used to always go, what was the name of that restaurant, John? Down to the Pitcher's Mound. We go for beer one night, every night after the game. And Terry Supernut was our coach, and he came up to me one night and he said, hey, Meisey, he said, I have to tell you something. You know why Rosette puts you in right field? And I said, well, you just never know. He says, do you realize that there's not one left-handed hitter in our league? But John, I love you anyhow. So I never missed a West practice. My son Matt was on the varsity for 4 years, and I really enjoyed it. But when Matt was in Little League, he never pitched a game. And when he was on the traveling team, he never pitched a game. And all of a sudden, the first day he's on varsity, as a freshman, Coach Albrecht puts him in the game to pitch. Well, I was shocked. Well, Matt walked the first guy. Next guy came up, he threw a ball up to him. Albrecht was right out there. Albrecht put his arm around Matt, and Claudia Peterson, who was a good friend of mine, said, I think that's so wonderful that Coach Albrecht came out to the mound and was so understanding, put his arm around your son and gave him all that encouragement. And I said to her, well, I'll ask Matt when he comes home just what Coach Albrecht said to him. So the next day we're at the game, and Matt told me what he said. And Claudia was sitting next to me again, and she said, by the way, what did Coach Albrecht say? And I said, well, Matt came home, and I said to Matt, what did Albrecht say to you? He says, he put his arm around me and he said, God damn it, Meisenheimer, throw strikes! Welcome to West Bend Varsity. One other story I just had is related to the Rollingers, and a thing that I'm really proud of. My other son, my oldest son, Mike, graduated from the University of Florida, and one day he was going to class, and he had a bicycle at that time, and he came out of school, and there was a note on his bicycle, and it said, give me a call. Well, it happened to be, this was when Tim Tebow played for Florida. The gal was the top, in fact, I think she has the great record of the best softball pitcher in the history of the University of Florida. And they dated. I've never met her, but I saw her on ESPN pitch once. And she challenged Mike, and she said, come on down to the field. I'm going to pitch to you and see if you can hit. Well, she pitched about 30 balls to him. He fouled off one. But in senior league, we were in a championship game, and who was pitching against our teacher's team at the time? My son was up, Ryan Rollinger. He pitched one ball, Mike fouled it off. 2 balls, fouled it off. 3 balls, 12 balls, fouled off. And the final, the 13th one, he struck my son out. So I thought that was a great accomplishment because he only fouled off 1 with the greatest pitcher in the history of Florida in softball, but he fouled off 12 against major leaguer Ryan Rollinger. So that was really something. One of the things that I helped raise money to build fields at Little League. I was on the board of Little League. I worked with some wonderful, wonderful people over the years. It was such a thrill to me. But one of the biggest thrills I had is after my sons finished their playing ball for West Bend West, Bob Bonifant called me up one day and he said, how would you like to do the color broadcasting for WBKV? And I jumped at the chance. I thought, this is just going to be great with my love for baseball. And I grew up in, the reason I have my shirt there, I grew up in Milwaukee, and I graduated from high school in 1957. So you know I'm going to be 80 years old this year. And I grew up with the Braves, and I just loved the Braves. And so I thought, who listens to WBKV for the ball games? I broadcasted West, East, and Kewaskum, broadcasted the state championship games, a couple of them, and then all the regional games was able to with Azor Shagelski, one of the best play-by-play guys I've ever met in my life. That guy was so good. I don't know if he's still doing, I don't know if he's doing, but he was so good at broadcasting. So I figured there's a lot of grandparents and a lot of aunts and uncles who maybe can't get to the game, and they were older like me. So I used to do trivia contests. In fact, I'll bet anybody, I know the starting lineup of the Milwaukee Braves, their first game against the St. Louis Cardinals in 1953, and I know all the players and all the numbers but 2 of the guys. So if you want to challenge me later, I'll tell you who they were.